Back home, and Peter Dutton says he will stare down what he has described as a scare campaign after unveiling the costs behind the Coalition's nuclear plan. Joining me live is former Howard Government Minister and Bondi Partners Senior Advisor Peter McGauran. Morning, Peter.
Good morning, Tim.
How big a part or how big a play do you think the whole energy thing is for the election campaign? And many would say that we're already in it.
Very significant, Tim, because it feeds into the cost of living, which will determine the outcome of the next election. And you're right, we're well into the election campaign.
Will it be May?
I believe so. I strongly believe it's May because I believe that Prime Minister Albanese must have a budget in March. Now, there are some saying there'll be an election in March or April. I don't believe so. I believe he has no choice but to do the budget, to give him an economic narrative, which he's sadly lacking at present. And secondly, if he doesn't, it just gives fodder to the opposition. What are you hiding? Are you going to raise taxes? And so on.
The Jewish community is feeling a lot of uncertainty and fear at the moment. Have our governments and security agencies been doing enough?
Security agencies, yes, they've committed their lives to keeping Australians safe. Governments, it's a mixed bag. Chris Minns and the New South Wales government have been resolute from day one. Chris Minns has apologised profusely for not being stronger in that demonstration at the Opera House 2 days after October the 7th, but he's not made that mistake again. And the police forces take their lead from their from the elected government of the day. So the New South Wales Police on the weekly Sunday pro-Palestine demonstrations have been strong and they've been controlled and inconvenience to the public minimised. Jacinta Allen in Victoria has been hopeless, meek. Even her response to the bombing of the Adas synagogue, the fire bombing, was timid, was delayed. She didn't turn up for several days. Prime Minister Albanese, sadly, from day one, got this wrong because he succumbed to domestic politics, where his senior cabinet ministers with a high Muslim voting proportion in their electorates dictated to him. And Penny Wong has, I'm afraid, with her conduct of foreign policy, particularly controlling the United Nations votes, has also made the Jewish community feel abandoned.
Well, to that point, the Coalition has been critical of the Labor government's policy on the Middle East. Is foreign policy separate to the appalling anti-Semitic attacks that we've seen?
They're separate to the offenders who are undertaking these car fires and the graffiti and now the firebombing of the synagogue, because it's not as if they're even aware of these United Nations votes, but the anti-Israel United Nations voting record of Australia in past months does feed into the Jewish community's feelings of insecurity and fear.
Now, the economy. The RBA has given the government some hope that there could be a rate cut before the election. The summer will be crucial to determine, but it's interesting, there's not a lot that happens over the summer domestically for them to say, well, in February we're going to go boom. There could be some variables coming out of other parts of the world, but last week you said there's no chance of a rate cut before the next election. Are you wobbling?
Well, I was wobbling on Tuesday when the Reserve Bank held out a glimmer only, and it's reading of the tea leaves on Tuesday. But by Thursday, with unemployment announced at 3.9%, an immediate interest rate cut's been abandoned. So you won't get an interest rate cut in February.
Mums and dads are desperate for it, aren't they?
Oh,
they are so desperate for it.
4.25%. Of course, people need relief. There'll be new inflation figures around for the February meeting. I don't think there'll be an interest rate cut in February. Could be March, April. Probably comes too late to help the Albanese government. Better than not having it, but I don't think it's an election turner.
The Peter McGauran crystal ball does work well. You declared the US election very early, much earlier than most. Who's going to win the Australian election?
Can I reserve finality on that for a few more weeks or months, Tim? Because it's so close. It's very close. And that in itself is a story that Peter Dutton and the Coalition are so competitive.
But we are campaigning now, aren't we?
Campaigning. He's got the primary vote of the Coalition up to 40%. That puts him within reach of the 43%, if you like. Labor's primary vote is disastrous at 29-30%. Dutton's outranking Albanese on a whole number of key characteristics: strength, command of the economy, foreign policy, national security. So the tailwinds are in Dutton's sails, but he's basically at Camp 3 of Mount Everest, and the summit is a long way off because it takes 21 seats.
Okay, well, that's a nice analogy. Climbing Everest. I will see you next week.